Imagine a world where the Chicago Bulls never traded Scottie Pippen. No draft night deal with the Seattle Supersonics. No risky gamble on a raw forward from Central Arkansas. Instead, Pippen stays in Seattle, and the Bulls, who in reality ended up pairing Michael Jordan with his perfect running mate, are left scrambling to find another piece to complement their star. To understand how different this timeline could have been, we need to rewind to that pivotal 1987 NBA draft night. The Bulls, desperate to surround Jordan with talent, traded their pick for Pippen. It turned out to be one of the greatest moves in franchise history, because Pippen's arrival transformed Chicago from a team with a single superstar into a dynasty waiting to happen. But what if it never happened? In this alternate history, Pippen remains with the Seattle Supersonics, a franchise already stocked with young talent like Xavier McDaniel, Dale Ellis, and Tom Chambers. The Sonics, with Pippen's versatile defense, ball handling, and size, suddenly become one of the West's most dangerous young teams. By the late 1980s, they're a franchise capable of standing toe-to-toe with the Lakers, Rockets, and Jazz. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Jordan is left carrying a roster that isn't ready for championships. Sure, he's putting up historic scoring numbers, but without Pippen's defensive brilliance and unselfish playmaking, the Bulls remain a team prone to early playoff exits. This changes the entire power structure of the NBA. Imagine Jordan battling the bad boy Pistons without Pippen's help. In reality, it took both of them, Jordan's relentless scoring and Pippen's defense on players like Isaiah Thomas, to finally conquer Detroit. In this timeline, Jordan is forced into a series of grueling wars he can't win alone. The Pistons' dynasty stretches even longer, collecting more banners in the late 80s and possibly even into the early 90s. By the time the Lakers fade, it's Detroit and maybe the up-and-coming Cavaliers who run the East, not Chicago. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Pippen is blossoming. With his defensive versatility, he becomes the backbone of a team that never relied on one dominant scorer. Instead, the Sonics build their identity around balance and length. By 1991, instead of Chicago raising their first championship banner, it could very well be Seattle shocking the league by knocking off the Lakers in the West and facing Detroit in the finals. Think about the ripple effects here. Jordan's legacy suddenly looks very different. Without 6 rings, without the dynasty, maybe people start comparing him to Wilt Chamberlain or Karl Malone, a player with historic stats but limited team success. The debate over the greatest of all time takes a drastically different shape. And the Bulls' front office? In this timeline, their impatience could have pushed Jordan to demand a trade. It is not hard to imagine a frustrated Jordan leaving Chicago earlier than 1998. Maybe as early as the mid-90s. Would we have seen Jordan in New York? Or maybe in Philadelphia, closer to his Carolina roots? The idea alone is staggering. For Seattle fans, this is heaven. They never lose their team to relocation because the franchise flourishes with success. By keeping Pippen, they become a powerhouse through the 90s. Imagine a Sonics team built around Pippen and then later adding Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp. Instead of just being a fun finals cameo in 1996, the Sonics might have been a dynasty in their own right. The early 90s NBA landscape is completely altered. Jordan fights for relevancy, Detroit and Cleveland run the East, and Seattle emerges as a Western dynasty to challenge the fading Lakers. Championships are scattered. No single team dominates like the Bulls did. The league, while competitive, never sees the kind of global takeover Chicago achieved with Jordan and Pippen. Nike still markets Jordan as a superstar, but without the championship aura, his cultural impact is diminished. Be Like Mike doesn't carry the same weight if Mike isn't winning titles. By 1993, instead of the Bulls three-peating, you might see Detroit with 4 championships, Seattle breaking through in the West, and Jordan frustrated in Chicago, struggling with burnout even sooner. The ripple effects spread to stars like Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and Hakeem Olajuwon, each of whom finds more opportunities in a league without the Bulls dynasty blocking their path. And what about Phil Jackson? In reality, Jackson's triangle offense worked because he had Jordan and Pippen as the perfect chess pieces. Without Pippen, does Jackson even rise to prominence? Maybe he never becomes the Zen master of 11 rings. Maybe he remains an assistant or ends up coaching somewhere else, never achieving the legendary status that shaped modern NBA coaching. This alternate timeline doesn't just change one team. It rewrites the legacies of nearly every major star of the 1990s. And we haven't even hit the mid-90s yet, where things get even wilder. As the mid-90s roll in, the impact of Pippen's absence from Chicago grows even more glaring. In our real timeline, the Bulls had cemented themselves as the defining dynasty of the decade. But here, without Pippen, the 1991-1993 finals belonged to a rotation of other teams. Detroit adds a third banner, Houston sneaks in a championship earlier, and the Cavaliers finally capitalize on their strong roster to make a finals run. Michael Jordan, meanwhile, remains the ultimate individual talent, but his story becomes one of frustration. He's still the most feared scorer in basketball, but year after year, playoff defeats pile up. Instead of 6 championships, Jordan ends his career with maybe 1, possibly 2 at best. 1 in the twilight of his career if Chicago finally lands another star, or if he jumps to a contender late. This changes the GOAT debate entirely. Fans might rank him behind players like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, or even Tim Duncan in all-time lists. Seattle, on the other hand, becomes the epicenter of NBA success. With Pippen leading the way, and then Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp joining him, the Sonics become the team of the 90s. Pippen's unselfish play allows Kemp to thrive as a high-flying force and Payton to become a defensive menace. By 1995, Seattle is the team that knocks Houston out of the West, and by 1996, instead of facing Jordan's Bulls, they're facing a weaker Eastern team, maybe the Knicks or the Cavs, and they win. This reality also reshapes free agency. Players who might have chased rings in Chicago now look to join Seattle or even Detroit. Imagine Barkley joining the Sonics instead of Phoenix. Imagine Clyde Drexler teaming up with Pippen instead of Hakeem. Suddenly, Seattle is the glamorous destination for stars chasing a title. As the NBA enters the late 90s, the global explosion of basketball isn't the same. The Bulls dynasty was a marketing dream for the league. Without it, David Stern struggles to elevate the NBA to the worldwide phenomenon it became. Sure, stars like Jordan and Shaq still shine, but without Chicago dominating, the NBA Finals lack the iconic aura that drew millions of new fans overseas. Basketball is still big, but it's not the cultural juggernaut it became in our world. By the time Jordan retires, his resume is historic but flawed. The greatest scorer ever, but not the greatest winner. The title of most dominant dynasty of the 90s belongs to Seattle, and Scottie Pippen's legacy skyrockets. Instead of being remembered as the ultimate sidekick, Pippen is remembered as the franchise cornerstone of the Sonics dynasty. His name is mentioned in the same breath as Magic, Bird, and Duncan, a superstar who defined an era. And the Bulls? They become a cautionary tale. Instead of the dynasty that defined basketball, they're remembered as the franchise that couldn't build around the greatest talent in history. Chicago's front office is roasted for years, and their reputation never recovers. Free agents avoid the Bulls, and the franchise struggles well into the 2000s. In the end, this what if reminds us how fragile dynasties are. One trade, one draft night decision, changed not only Chicago's future, but the history of the entire NBA. Without Pippen, Jordan's path to greatness is blocked, the Bulls dynasty never exists, and Seattle becomes the city that dominates the 90s. The legacies of legends are rewritten. Jordan is still an icon, but not the unquestioned GOAT. Pippen becomes a franchise savior instead of a sidekick. The Sonics never leave Seattle, and basketball history belongs to them. So ask yourself, if one trade could alter the course of history so dramatically, how many other what-ifs are out there, waiting to be explored?